If you live in Seattle and you're at this event, you've probably heard of Holla. If you haven't, you've been asleep for the 16 months since the mayor's office released it as a way of addressing our housing affordability crisis. And I decided that it would be a great topic for a design studio, an architectural design studio at the UW where I teach. We decided to look at the Wallingford neighborhood. It's just north of Lake Union. We did so for a couple of reasons. One is I live there and I know it. Another, Okay, I won't try the laser. Another is that it has adequate access to transit, to parks, to commercial space, to restaurants, to booze. Makes it a good place for increased housing density and affordability. But it's a neighborhood that has a reputation of being resistant to change, and this reputation is not without merit. But change is happening in the neighborhood nonetheless. 800 square foot single-story bungalows are being torn down and replaced by new single-family houses, some of which are as large as 5,500 square feet, and for some unknown reason have 2 master bedroom suites. So the studio asked a simple question: what if we were to increase housing density and affordability within the neighborhood, but to do so in a way that would actually be of benefit to all neighbors? And this is 4 of those projects. The first is by Anders, who is actually here tonight, and I'm sure I've just completely embarrassed him. And he's interested in the traditional mom and pop corner grocery store with apartments above, and he asked, what if we allowed some of these buildings that we have successfully zoned out of existence in our single-family zones and allowed 0 lot line buildings with commercial at the base, 6 to 8 apartments above. The commercial space could be used, for example, as co-working space so that one wouldn't have to work from home, but they wouldn't have to commute downtown either. Their commute would essentially be walking around the corner. Or a cafe, which would be a new destination in the neighborhood where you might meet a neighbor for coffee. Or daycare, so that instead of hauling your kids across town, you just simply haul them across the street and pick them up at the end of the day. Kala became very interested in the Meridian Park in the neighborhood and its rich tradition of urban agriculture. It's the home of the Wallingford Farmers Market, the Tilth Pea Patch and Greenhouse, and a legacy orchard in the park. But she also noticed that at the southern end of the park, showed within the dashed line, the single-family houses didn't have much of a relationship to the park, and they also limited entry to it from the south. She asked, what if there was a much more dense multifamily development at the end of the park, but not just any multifamily development, something that would build upon the rich legacy of urban agriculture within the park, something that would greatly expand the neighborhood pea patches and the legacy of orchards there, and increase the pedestrian accessibility from the south into the park, so that when entering, you'd be flanked on both sides by new neighborhood pea patch gardens. On rooftops and greenhouses and projecting balconies, gardens would grow. From within the park, instead of looking back at the sides of houses and fences, that would give the impression that the park was actually flowing between the buildings and back into the neighborhood itself. Jachi became very interested in the fact that in the northern part of the neighborhood, some of the blocks are very long, some in excess of 800 feet long. And she asked the question, what if there was a more pedestrian scale that was introduced by using a green pedestrian network of pedestrian ways that would cut through the middle of the blocks and provide a new place for affordable housing? The way it would work is you would purchase 2, 3, or 4 parcels that would be back to back, so that they would extend from street to street. Within those parcels, you would have a new pedestrian way, and along that pedestrian way, a new form of smaller scale, affordable housing, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The new pedestrian way would be intimate, it would have stoops along it, would be much more like an old English mews. The houses wouldn't have yards, instead they'd have rooftop decks overlooking the green pathway below. And in case you haven't figured it out already, this whole gig is about the invasion of young hipsters. And finally, John became very interested in a huge surface parking lot, a full 2 blocks long, just north of Lincoln High School, owned by Seattle Public Schools, a half block off the main commercial street of North 45th. And he asked, what if the parking were to be taken from the surface and put below grade? In fact, you would expand the amount of available parking. And above, you would build 3 courtyard buildings that would be a combination of market rate and affordable housing. The courtyard buildings would be designed in such a way that pedestrians from throughout the neighborhood could easily move between them and through them by way of intimate courtyards, each with their own character. So the corners of the blocks might be carved away so that it would increase visibility from one side of the block to the other. The perimeter might be made up of row houses, each with their own entries and stoops and gardens to enliven the street, and access into the courtyard might provide a sense of intrigue as to the more secluded space beyond. So we concluded the studio by asking yet another simple question. What if we stopped having the seemingly endless conversation as to whether or not we should increase housing density and affordability in all of our neighborhoods, as we ultimately must, and instead shifted the conversation to how can we creatively increase housing density and affordability in a way that benefits everyone? Thanks.